As I started watching the wide receivers for this year's NFL draft class, I was wondering when there was going to be a little more buzz and excitement generated around DJ Moore. I was really surprised, like, after I watched him, where I had him graded compared to where it seemed like other people were talking about him. And eventually it kind of caught up, and I seemed to be more aligned with others out there. I was just kind of surprised, but I guess when you play at Maryland and Maryland's football program stinks, it shouldn't be that much of a surprise. But DJ Moore is one of those guys that even though he technically played at a big school, he didn't play at a big football school. He's a guy that you're maybe not as familiar with. Maybe you are, but if you're not, you should be, because there's quite a bit to like about his game. Here's what I like about DJ Moore the most. His athletic ability, he has that type of upside to be a real explosive playmaker. Very quick, pretty fast. It's kind of like, to me, what was appropriate about DJ Moore is when he went to the combine and you got more out of him than you thought you would. He was a little bit taller than you thought he was going to be, a little bit bigger than you thought he was going to be. For some people, a little bit quicker and faster than they thought he was going to be. And it just kind of seems to like perfectly crystallize who DJ Moore is. He's one of those guys, the more that you like him, the more he leaps out to you a bit, and the more you start to understand what some of the fuss and some of the buzz is all about. He really uses that quickness, that speed, that overall athleticism with the ball in his hands. He is a big-time threat after the catch. He can make guys miss. He can set up defenders and just fake them out of their sneakers. I said sneakers. God damn it, I'm getting older by the day. And he could also lower his shoulder and run through some tackles. Now, granted, he's not a huge guy, so he's not going to run through a ton of tackles at the NFL level. But as I've talked about with other wide receivers, can they make the tough play? Not always the 50-yard bomb, not always the fade route or the stop fade on the back shoulder. On 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 10, can you throw it a couple yards short of the sticks and trust the guy to be able to get a first down? DJ Moore, I feel like, does also fall into that category of that type of guy you could potentially trust. I also really like the fact that he's a durable guy. He's able to play game in and game out and consistently answer the bell. So there shouldn't be medical red flags about him. There shouldn't be a ton of concern about drafting him high and then watching him sit on the sideline half the damn time. And what I really liked about that was not only was he a guy that consistently answered the bell in terms of being available to play, he also answered the bell consistently in terms of his effort level. I always watched him and thought he played really hard. And not all wide receivers play really hard. They fall in that Deion Sanders school of making business decisions, and that's okay. Because if you have a big-time explosive playmaker, like if you're the Giants and you have Odell Beckham Jr., do you want him going over the middle and taking 50 big shots a year? Fuck no, you don't. And if you do, you're an idiot fan, and more importantly, if you are a coach that thinks that, you are an idiot that deserves to be immediately fired because you are going to end the young man's career a decade before it should be ended. But DJ Moore does, again, he plays consistently hard. And I really, really like that about him. I feel like he's also got some potential as a return guy. He's a guy that could go back there, I think, and make some plays happen as a punt returner, which adds a little bit of value to him. But you talk about a guy that's electric with the ball in his hands, that has the quickness and speed to get open in short spaces, to get open down the field, plays hard, consistency, a lot to like. Why isn't he the number one wide receiver in this draft class for me? Well, there's a few things. One, he lacks the ideal size for an outside wide receiver. I don't think that's the be-all, end-all because I don't know. And I think as we go along over the next couple of years, that's going to matter less and less because everybody's going to be able to play in the slot. Everybody will play outside, so it might not matter. But again, he is not the biggest wide receiver in the world. He's going to have to get better in terms of the precision of his route movements. He needs to better sync up his upper body to sell his routes. I feel like at times he could be just a tad bit choppy in his routes. Not terrible, but he does need to improve. I feel like he also could have some trouble, like a lot of the wide receivers, frankly, in this draft class, big and small, with separating from the press, getting off of physical, in-your-face man coverage due to his size, but also due to the lack of hand usage. Like, he doesn't use his hands very well to get off the press. He's not somebody that sells it and then moves. He's not somebody that could really give you a quick initial pop with his hands and stick you and then get off. He doesn't use his hands very well, and he's going to have to use his hands better, even if he's playing primarily out of the slot at the NFL level. He's also not a true 50-50 target guy, meaning when you throw the 50-50 jump ball into that tight window, into that tough spot, and you've just got to have it, he doesn't come down with a lot of those. He doesn't make a lot of those plays. And that's okay because he can still be a very good player, and sometimes guys go to the NFL and they become better at that than they were at college, but he's not a real 50-50 tough throw type of guy. He's better when you get him in space. He's better when he can use his quickness and speed to get open and then get the ball in his hands quickly and allow him to make plays in the open field. That's where he's best at. You're not wanting, I think, to utilize him to make a lot of those super tough catches over the middle. You don't want to make a ton of tough catches, having to go up and get the ball at its highest point in jump ball situations. If you're trying to do that with him again, it's not the best utilization of your talent. He's going to also have to work on his hands in terms of catching the ball away from his body, meaning that when the ball comes to him relatively consistently, he really waits until it gets really close to him and oftentimes does end up catching it against his body. And yes, some guys are able to get away with that at the college level, but it always seems to manifest into a problem once these guys get to the NFL, and those are the guys that have a tendency to struggle with drops and inopportune drops at bad times. He's got to learn to be better about catching the ball in front of him, away from his body, attacking the ball with his hands, because if he doesn't, it is going to lead to some of those issues. And if he does, it will actually improve his consistency catching the football and also increase his catch radius. And for not being a huge guy, you'd like to get as much out of him in terms of his catch radius as possible, and not letting the ball get so close to his body will definitely help. That said, I'm not surprised to see his draft stock pointing up. I liked him quite a bit when I watched him. I'm like, ooh. And like I said earlier, and I'm not surprised that other people are pretty high on him too. He really has the potential to be a high-end slot weapon. Could potentially be a really good number 2 or number 1 wide receiver even on the outside. He's going to have to improve his technique as a route runner. He's going to have to get better catching the ball with his hands. But I think the upside is pretty nice with him. I think it's very nice with him. And like I say, he was kind of flying under the radar, but I don't think he will any longer. I've seen a number of comparisons to Golden Tate, and I feel like that's a pretty appropriate one. You could go with Stephon Diggs, because Stephon Diggs came out of Maryland. If you remember a couple of years ago, I thought it was pretty high on him compared to others, where he went in the 5th round. I think I had like a 2nd to 3rd round grade on him. There's some similarities there, but with the effort level, how hard he plays, how physical he could be at his size, his run after catch ability, that's where it reminds me more of Golden Tate. I look at him and I say, this is a guy that has a chance to slide into the back end of round 1. Worst case scenario, he's not going to last long in round 2, nor should he. Because to me, DJ Moore is easily a top 5 wide receiver in this class. And I'll fight, not necessarily throw blows, but we will verbally fight over that if I get tremendous amount of disagreement. Like, I can understand where we might have variances in some places or some places, but I just can't see how you could come up with 5 wide receivers in this draft class that are better than DJ Moore. And my grade reflects that. I've got him at an 89.5, so he's just off of being a first-round talent. And when it's all said and done, and I've graded all the big names and the second-level names and everything else, DJ Moore will be a top 32 player in this draft for me. He may end up being top 25. Worst case, top 32. And with that, that means to me, especially like top 25, he's a guy that somebody like Atlanta should be looking at, maybe a Carolina should be looking at, just depending on the way the draft board plays out. You know, maybe somebody like a New England, who knows? So I feel like he's a guy that could come in and contribute immediately, and coaches are really going to like having in the fold. He's a top 5 wide receiver in this class. That much I know for sure.